Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
So there is a battle brewing. Here we are, like less than a week from Christmas, the start of Hanukkah, the holiday season. And usually this is a slow time for politics at the state level for sure. As we head into a new presidential administration, there's all kinds of salacious, tongue-wagging headlines. The new Matt Gaetz report is going to come out, and now he's already starting to let it be known, he had some indiscretions when he was younger, and it's sort of laying the groundwork for that. But that's not at all what I want to talk about to start the show with. In fact, I may not talk about it at all. You've got plenty of other outlets for that. Here I am in Atlanta, Georgia, where another legislative session is set to kick off next month, and the Georgia General Assembly already has a problem on its hand, a problem of its own making. But it really depends on how you get your news. And even at the very local level, spin matters. You have, case in point, Fox 5 Atlanta, WAGA Television, and WSB Channel 2. Let me let you in on how they reported on a school voucher program that is set to roll out next year that is either woefully underfunded by like more than a third. No, I'm sorry, by more than 2/3, meaning they've enough for 6% of the student population, but the law, the way it's being interpreted by the entity that's going to operate it, they seem to think that 1 in 5 or 20% of Georgia's student population would be eligible, and they only have the money for about 6%. So first things first, that has to do with eligible schools and the way the list of eligible schools, they have to somehow fall into this lower quarter percentile of performing schools in the state of Georgia. If a child is zoned for a school that is performing below that threshold, just zoned for it, not actually of age for it, but just zoned for it, meaning your elementary school child may be zoned in a high school zone. This makes no sense, right? That is underperforming, even though the child attends an elementary school that isn't underperforming. Now all of a sudden, your child, that elementary school child, is now eligible for a $6,500 voucher. Yeah, folks are kind of going, wait, what? Let me start with the way Fox 5 WAGA parsed it.
Georgia parents could learn if their children can get a $6,500 school voucher, and a new rule makes more students eligible.
Yeah, did you hear that? I mean, that's some spin right there. Hey, it sounds like you could have more eligible students for this program that the state is rolling out. Santa's coming to town with a big sack of vouchers, and more kids are going to get one. Yeah, there's a problem with that. The math ain't mathing.
State officials are expected to re-release the list of underperforming schools. And Good Day's Mark Teichner is live at the state capitol with the latest on all of this. There's been quite a bit of confusion here, Mark. Good morning.
It certainly is, and that initial list was pulled because of some data issues, and when this new list comes out, it is pretty safe to say that there's going to be a whole lot more kids and parents who are eligible for these vouchers than originally expected.
Again, a pretty positive spin from the sounds of things. It sounds like we've got a little bit of a problem due to interpretation of a law. But the way WAGA Television sort of spins this from the start, well, it looks like good news. There could be more eligible students and parents for this new school voucher program. They sort of bury the details, and, well, here's how it kind of unrolls. And again, this story came out like December 12th, by the way, just letting you know that this is how far back this reporting has been going on.
The Georgia Promise Scholarship was set up to give $6,500 education vouchers to students attending lower performing schools, helping to offset private tuition or fund homeschooling efforts. But a ruling by the body running the program could open it up to more than 1 in 5 students in the state. The Georgia Education Savings Authority says any student in a zone that has a school on the low performing list can get the money, even if they don't go to that school. According to the Associated Press, the ruling could make more than 400,000 students eligible, including every child in the Augusta and Macon districts, and more than half in Atlanta, DeKalb, Clayton, and Douglas counties.
Do you remember voting for somebody to sit on the board called the Georgia Savings Education Authority. I don't remember seeing anybody on that ballot. Here we have literally unelected bureaucrats taking our taxpayer dollars and utilizing it to destroy public education in the state's largest school systems.
The law caps funding at $144 million, paying for more than 22,000 vouchers. That would cover fewer than 6% of the students eligible thanks to the ruling.
And here we get to the problem. Finally, Fox 5 WAGA got to the problem of the story. So a week ago, as they start reporting this, here's how the solution comes in.
If too many parents apply, the money would be prioritized to families making less than 4 times the federal poverty level, about $100,000 for a family of 3.
Which sounds nice. We're going to help the poorer families out with a $6,500 school voucher. Small problem with that. Going to a private school costs way more than that. This from Verdalia Turner, president of the Georgia Federation of Teachers.
Parents going to feel like, oh, I have something now. I got some money to send my kid to a private school. $6,500 is not going to pay for a child in school.
Now, I want to let you listen to how WSB Television, Channel 2 Action News, here in Atlanta, covered the story 2 days ago.
Georgia parents are waiting to see if their children's school is at the bottom 25% for academic achievement. That might make them eligible for a school voucher, and that money could be used toward a private school. New at 4, Channel 2's Richard Elliott is live at the state capitol this afternoon, where confusion over the law, Richard, could put the program in jeopardy.
I mean, I'll say.
Yeah, a lot of confusion right now. Right now, if your child's school is in the bottom 25% of the state, you could be eligible for that $6,500 voucher that could be used to pay for private school. But confusion over that law might make paying for it very difficult for the state.
The General Assembly passed the bill this year. If your school finishes in the bottom 25% of the state, you could be eligible for up to $6,500 in vouchers, which can be used to pay for private schools. But the plan hit a snag, and the state released several versions of the list, then pulled them back because of confusion over the law and the criteria used. The law was supposed to cover only students attending schools, but Georgia Education Savings Authority believes the wording in the law means it covers every child living in a school attendance zone, which could dramatically increase the number of children eligible for the $6,500 and making it nearly impossible for the state to pay for it all. In a statement, the executive director of the governor's office of student achievement said her office is, quote, conducting a careful, thorough, and conscientious analysis of the validation process to ensure the ultimate list is correct, and it will therefore be posted at a later date in the new year.
Well, GIE has opposed vouchers from the very beginning.
Lisa Morgan is the president of the Georgia Association of Educators. She thinks the law, as written, doesn't do what lawmakers intended it to do, and thinks this new interpretation doesn't do it either.
As in so many things, when legislators pass a law, their intention and the implementation often are not in alignment.
But maybe they actually are here. I'll discuss.
And there is word that lawmakers, when they come back in January, will try to tweak that law to clarify some of that language. We're live at the state capitol. Richard Elliott, Channel 2 Action News.
All right, let's go to Cassidy Alexander, Martha Dalton with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. This was from December 14th. The headline, a math problem. Thousands of Georgia students eligible for a limited number of promise vouchers. And as they report, Georgia officials could soon face a difficult math problem. More than 300,000 students are likely eligible for a new voucher program, an analysis by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution found. That's more than 15 times the number of students for which the state budgeted. The Georgia legislature approved the Georgia Promise Scholarship Act earlier this year. It allows children who live, we've already talked about this, the lower 25%, $6,500. Funding was capped at 1% of the public education budget in Georgia, an estimated $140 million annually when the law was passed, or enough to provide scholarships to about 21,000 students. Administrators at the Georgia Student Finance Commission, which is overseeing the program, are waiting for the first glimpse of Governor Brian Kemp's budget for the next fiscal year. That's when they'll know whether the budget sets aside the maximum allowed and how much that is, or whether it allocates less. The program will begin in the fall of 2025 and last at least a decade, meaning no matter how well it is funded, isn't funded, how well this unfunded, unelected bureaucracy that is telling us how they interpret things, no matter what they do, we've got this program for at least a decade. Further down in the article, in DeKalb County alone, the state's third largest school system in the district with the most schools on the list, roughly 35,000 students, could qualify for the program under the original list. Put another way, if the state wanted to give the scholarships to each of those 340,000 students across Georgia, that would cost more than $2 billion. Not $140 million, $2 billion. But that wasn't part of the plan, according to State Senator Greg Dolezal, a Republican from Cumming who sponsored the bill. He said it was never envisioned, obviously, that every eligible student would be taking advantage of it. Over time, I would expect the demand for the program to grow. Further down in this article, here's a nice little nugget that we all need to pay attention to. When the bill was first introduced, Dolezal said there was no cap on the scholarships. It was added by opponents of the bill for good reason, because it sounds to me like now these unelected bureaucrats on this board that nobody voted on has decided they want to interpret the law as it wasn't written. They want to go around the cap on the scholarships added by those who are more skeptical of the school voucher program. Back to the article. But with the cap being a percentage of overall funding, Dolezal expects the money to increase annually with overall education funding. Whether lawmakers would be interested in raising the cap would depend on demand, he says. But for now, the article goes on to say it's a waiting game. We really do not know how many students are going to apply, according to Lynn Riley, president of the Georgia Student Finance Commission. We think there's going to be an appetite. But as you heard Verdalia Turner say minutes ago in that Fox 5 WAGA piece, $6,500 isn't going to cover the cost of tuition. So if it's not actually going to help the families it's intended to help, who's it going to help? Well, the devil's in the details. Back to the AJC article. In the first year of the program, families earning less than 400% of the federal poverty level, or about $125,000 for a family of four, are first in line for the scholarship. If the number of applications exceeds the funds available, students will be selected randomly and from that group first. Of the 340,000 eligible students, roughly 70% of them qualify for the programs like Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits or Medicaid, or are homeless according to state data. State Senator Jason Estevez of Atlanta opposed the bill. He expects few families will enroll in the program. A lot of these parents are not going to be able to afford private school tuition, he said. On top of the scholarship, they're going to need financial aid or find a private school that only charges $6,500 a year. The average annual private school tuition in Georgia is, by the way, $11,963, according to one estimate. In Metro Atlanta, tuition at some private schools costs more than $30,000 a year. So that money is just wasted. It's useless. It's absolutely useless to a poor family. Estevez, a former Atlanta school board chair, said the problems that exist in public education won't be solved by diverting money to private schools. Going to take a quick break. Come back. We've got a fresh op-ed from friend of the show, Jay Bookman at the Georgia Recorder when the Ron Show returns on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Show notes, as always, for each episode at ronshowatl.com. If you enjoy the show, you'd like to help be a part of keeping it afloat. This is all an out-of-pocket venture on yours truly, by the way. You can donate as well at ronshowatl.com. Ron Show ATL for all your social media appetites, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter X, Blue Sky, on Blue Sky as well. Talking about Georgia School Voucher Program, my hunch is you're going to see the legislature come in, realize there's a math problem, and instead of reining in the interpretation by this, again, unelected board that's overseeing the implementation of this program, you'll see lawmakers with an appetite for adding more funding to it. Now, I don't know if it's going to go from $140 million as it's sort of projected to be $2 billion to cover the gutting of Atlanta public schools, DeKalb County public schools, Fulton, Augusta, Richmond County, Macon, Bibb. I don't know. That's a tall task. But there is this $16 billion surplus, and Republicans have been loath to do anything but offer tax breaks. But to save a pet program that is a conservative wet dream, maybe they'll see things differently. Jay Bookman at the Georgia Recorder writing in a piece that landed early this morning. He was up late last night, or maybe that they just published it late. Anyway, the headline, wealthy school voucher supporters send disapproving taxpayers the bill. School vouchers are unpopular, he writes. They are unpopular with liberal voters. They are unpopular with conservative voters, especially in rural counties, by the way. In modern American politics, it is rare to find such agreement, with voters of all stripes recognizing that they pose an existential threat to public education. Yet somehow in Georgia and other states, voucher programs continue to be implemented against what appears to be strong bipartisan opposition. How is that happening, he asks. It's happening because a relative handful of very wealthy people have made school vouchers their pet vanity project, using multi-million-dollar campaign chests to try to refashion state legislatures all across the country to do their will. Jeffrey Yoss of Pennsylvania, Betsy DeVos of Michigan, Richard Uihlein of Illinois, Charles Koch of Kansas, and other billionaires are all funding crusades in states where they don't live, threatening the health of public schools that their kids will never attend because they believe they know better than residents of those states how their children should be educated. But this is the side of the aisle that fears indoctrination. Back to Bookman's piece. In Texas, for example, Yass and others donated tens of millions of dollars to remove conservative legislators who had dared to vote against a universal voucher program. In legislative races, $10,000 can do a lot of damage. And in November, they succeeded in removing 15 conservative anti-voucher legislators, replacing them with candidates willing to do their bidding. In states such as Georgia, where public opposition has continued to frustrate straightforward attempts to implement universal vouchers, proponents have resorted to political intimidation, deception, and bait-and-switch legislation to accomplish their goals. Let's start with the assertion that vouchers are highly unpopular. In every single state, Bookman writes, liberal or conservative, in which voters have had a chance to directly voice their opinion, pro-voucher referendums have been defeated, and usually by overwhelming margins. It happened most recently last month in Nebraska. I think it happened in Kentucky as well here recently. Anyway, Bookman writes, a conservative state that Donald Trump carried by 20 points, Nebraska. If vouchers are truly a grassroots conservative cause with broad popular support, surely you would expect them to be popular in the Nebraska heartland. Yet Nebraskans voted overwhelmingly, 57 to 43%, to repeal a voucher program that their state legislators had tried to impose on them. It was the third time that Nebraskans have directly voted against using taxpayer money to fund private schools. Oh, here he is, Kentucky. This story was much the same. State legislators, goaded by out-of-state donors, needed to change the state constitution to allow vouchers, but doing so required that they get voter approval. It didn't happen. In a deep red state that Trump carried by 30 points, the proposed voucher amendments was rejected by 30 points. It failed in every one of those states' 120 counties, rural and urban. Bookman writes, it's also important to note that the distorting effect of huge sums of campaign money from billionaire voucher proponents is not felt solely in legislative races. Republican megadonors have also made it clear to politicians with ambitions for higher office that if they want the type of large donations needed in national races, they better toe the line on vouchers. So here in Georgia last year, Governor Brian Kemp helped to strong-arm the state legislature into narrowly passing what was sold to legislators and the public as a very limited voucher bill, estimated to provide $6,500 in taxpayer money to pay private school tuition to students in the lowest performing 25% of Georgia schools. As part of that bill, legislators authorized spending for vouchers for as many as 22,000 students who were supposedly stuck in those poor performing schools. Remember the whole at needs part too. Except suddenly state education officials have reread the new law and now claim that it makes as many as 400,000 Georgia students eligible for vouchers, including hundreds of thousands who do not attend a low-performing school. That is a number that was never heard or seen during debate on the legislation. State Representative Chris Irwin, chair of the House Education Committee, told the Associated Press that wasn't how the law was intended to work, and he wants it rewritten. Well, too bad. You already have the law. Good luck getting anything done in the General Assembly. We'll see. House Speaker Pro Tem Jan Jones joined him, saying she also felt misled. That wasn't my understanding, she said of the expanded program. This is hardly the first time, Bookman writes, that voucher proponents in Georgia have told the public one thing during debate on a bill only to turn around and disavow those promises later. It's the kind of bait-and-switch technique you turn to only when you know that your proposal is too unpopular to be adopted through honest means. Bookman continues, zero in on this, kids. It's also important to point out that the public's distrust in vouchers is well-grounded in fact and reality. Study after study has found that vouchers do not improve education outcomes and instead can cause significant harm. And just as opponents have warned for decades, most of the taxpayer money spent on vouchers is going to subsidize students in prosperous families who are already attending private school or being homeschooled. Relatively little is used to help public school students escape, air quotes, into better schools, the supposed rationale for vouchers. And because voucher advocates insist upon little or no regulation of such programs, abuses have become legendary. He cites Florida, for example, homeschooling parents are using tax money to fund family trips to Disney World. In Arizona, families are using vouchers to buy themselves big screen TVs. In Arkansas, a state that ranks 45th in the country in teacher pay, a voucher program created in 2023 is paying for horseback riding lessons for homeschooled children. Think about that. At a time when public schools often lack funding for even basic supplies, voucher advocates are using taxpayer money for equestrian training. Bookman concludes his piece with this paragraph. You can cite any number of circumstances in which unregulated campaign money is distorting the political process in this country, but perhaps none is as egregious, blatant, and potentially destructive as the debate over vouchers. Rural communities in particular are wary of proposals that would drain resources from their public schools, and if Democrats are looking for a way to restore common ground with those voters, the fight against vouchers offers a great opportunity to do so. I'll include that piece in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. Like many other issues, this will come down to messaging. Are Georgia Democrats at the state level going to have the messaging right? Because they're going to need to in order to keep this from becoming a $200 billion handout to the wealthy and the gutting of public schools in inner city Georgia. Back after this.
Call or text The Ron Show anytime at 404-919-2725. The Ron Show on America One Radio.
I spend so much time pouring through articles and keeping an eye on social media throughout the day and evening. I'm really kind of kicking myself a little bit because I didn't bookmark this, but in the whole discussion about Georgia school voucher program, where an unelected board put in place to oversee the school voucher implementation and rollout has decided to interpret the law how they see it versus how it's written and open up the process where students who are zoned in a school district, perhaps your middle school child is zoned in an elementary school district where the elementary school meets the threshold, but the middle school he or she attends doesn't. Well, because they're zoned in the same zone that the elementary school is, even if your child's in middle school and doesn't need the your child gets a voucher or is eligible for a voucher, $6,500. You can use that towards sending them to private school if you like, but chances are you're going to spend at least twice that or upwards of twice that, if not more, to then send your kid to private school. If you can't afford that, then the voucher is useless to you. You're not homeschooling your kid, that voucher is useless to you. You're not going to get that voucher. It'll just keep going to someone else until that someone else isn't in the poverty level as well. And that's why there's concern that a $140 million program could become a $2 billion program, and that program would go to families who don't need the voucher in the first place. But Ron, there's a cap on the expenditure. Yeah, here's where I'm kicking myself. I've read so many articles over the last few days and weeks, and, it's 'tis the season, right? And so much social media. I know I saw a quote from someone somewhere in the Republican Party here in Georgia where the shrug off was, well, then we'll just fund it more. So more taxpayer dollars going to a school voucher program that doesn't help the needy and at risk in poorly performing schools, but instead goes to families who are probably already sending their kids to private school to get essentially another tax break for that more well-off family. That's what it sounds like to me. Democrats at the state level need to start working on their messaging. I said this weeks ago after the election demise here in November that at the state level, at the federal level, Democrats have to do a better job at messaging. I implored whomever is going to become the new chair of the Georgia Democratic Party to start implementing a communications apparatus to assist with that. Maybe, you know what, I may just put in the link in the show notes at ronshowatl.com that particular episode so you can go back and listen to that. Messaging is a big thing, but also realizing that what we're doing hasn't been working despite having facts, math, data, logic, science all at our back, despite having the American public behind us on a lot of issues. Democrats continue not to win, and pundits are wondering what has to be done. Meanwhile, you have the Chuck Schumer types, the Nancy Pelosi types, Nancy less so, but you have stalwart establishment Democrats who are trying to cling to power in the party and say, we can fix this, when their decades-long track record says, no, actually, you're part of the problem. You can't fix the problem by staying there as part of the problem. Lee McGowan, a.k.a. Politics Girl, had a riff on this on social media just hours ago, as a matter of fact.
So, aside from my first year of rants, I've never been a creator who drops daily content. That's just not what I do. I've always said I don't do the news, I explain the news. I try to take a big picture look at what's going on in our country and then let you know what I think the important takeaways are. I do it on the Politics Girl podcast, I do it with my rants, and I try and do it now on mainstream media when I can because it seems like most people there have an agenda and it is not to inform the public.
True that.
So when I make videos, I do them for a reason. And today, that reason is to say that I believe the Democratic Party needs a major reboot. We've done the corporate Dem thing for a long time, and it is clearly not working. For the last 40 years, America has been working very well for a select group at the top, but not so well for the rest of us. And despite the fact that the Republicans are completely in bed with a group that has flourished, I believe Trump's current proposed cabinet has a collective self-worth of $360 billion. Somehow it's the Democrats, the party who support a living wage and unions and childhood tax credits and affordable health care, who have been labeled the elite. That's just bad branding. Democrats have lost the messaging war over and over again to deceit and misinformation and their own very special ability to misunderstand how to talk to people. It also doesn't help that the left has just enough of their own elites to stop us from being the truly populist party we should be. It is just not possible to continue to straddle the line between not upsetting the left's super rich and truly speaking for the people. The policies are all there. It's just the follow through that's not. The Democratic brand needs to be rebuilt. I would say it needs to be dismantled, but I'm a practical person. And I believe giving ourselves the unnecessary work of selling the country on a new party while we fight fascism just isn't a winning strategy. What we need is leadership ready to think outside the box and choose the needs of the people, which there are a lot of us, over the needs of our biggest donors. I think the donors are still ultimately going to come along because they believe in liberal values and the rule of law, and they have their own desires to defeat autocracy. But you just can't fight a rising oligarchy by favoring your own oligarchs.
Absolutely. By the way, I should also point out, she mentions the net worth of Trump's incoming cabinet at like $320 billion. That's not even including the Doge boys, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, who are not on Trump's cabinet, but are very much a part of Trump's cabinet. Just not on paper.
The truth is I've been disillusioned with the Democratic Party for a long time. But in a country that works like ours as a two-party system, you have to play the cards you've been dealt. And the Democrats, no matter my concerns, were where those of us with liberal values had to be if we wanted to win. Now, there are some wonderful representatives in the Democratic Party who really walk the walk. But at the leadership level, it often felt like they didn't quite get it. That instead of being a political party, the Democrats were more of a for-profit corporation, stuck in this let's check with the board, well, this is the way we've always done it, playback loop, where any calls for change were met with don't rock the boat energy. And while that worked for many people in power, it clearly didn't work for the majority of the nation who felt left behind and left out of the country's gains. And that allowed Republicans to peel off voters who felt forgotten, even if that meant voting against their own best interests. Now, I recognize that the rapid and unchecked spread of disinformation didn't help. That trying to fight people who lie without shame, while those lies are amplified by our media without context or pushback in the name of profit, became damn near impossible by the end of 2024. But this was a long time coming. And I believe it was only possible because the Democratic Party was still trying to behave as if everything was normal at a time where clearly nothing was.
And showing up on, talk shows on Sunday morning and the normalizing of Donald Trump, the normalizing of Marjorie Taylor Greene, the normalizing of absolute batshit insanity and outright lies played a large role in that. And I frustratingly watch those same Sunday shows and listen to the same pundits show up on CNN weekday afternoons with Wolf Blitzer all those years, and back when it was Chris Matthews on and on and on and on. It again, you just have to call lies. And I know that there is this sense of, well, I need to show some decorum with my esteemed colleague, the senator from, or the House representative from. No, if they're lying and it's bad for the country, you just have to call it out for what it is. They're not showing any decorum. Why are you?
They got rolled by the Republican new media messaging system.
Yep.
They were outmaneuvered by 40 years of court packing by the Federalist Society,
Yep.
outplayed by leadership like Mitch McConnell using every legal loophole to play dirty with the powers of Congress. They brought that proverbial knife to the gunfight for almost half a century, and now our country's democracy is lying bleeding on the ground.
Yep.
It is infuriating to watch the party with the better ideas and the better candidates who represent the majority sentiment in the nation continue to lose.
Right.
Say what you will about the right wing, but they are long-term planners who play to win and their efforts paid off. Now, this is not to say that I admire the Republican Party for their lawless, despicable behavior, or that I believe the Democrats should also lie and cheat and steal. But the Democrats must at least acknowledge that this is what their opponents are doing and fight back with the appropriate fire. The pen might be mightier than the sword, but not in a battle. A bunch of sternly written letters is no match for the complete abandonment of the norms and rules.
Yep.
The Democrats can't govern if they don't win, and they cannot win if they don't fight.
How many times have I said, how many times have you heard me say that Americans are drawn to strength? Not necessarily, muscly armed, tank top, hat backwards, knuckle dragon bro strength. I'm talking about just speaking truth to power. Say what you will about the Bernie Bros or how much we revere Bernie Sanders or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They say things that are sometimes unfiltered, and sometimes they're bitter pills to swallow for stalwart Democrats. And Democrats' response has always been, at least the establishment has always been, well, see, this is why you can't trust AOC. This is why you can't trust Bernie. Instead of saying, wow, you know what? They may have a point. No inward soul searching whatsoever. I bring up the fact that we largely ignored Occupy Wall Street. Remember when Occupy Wall Street happened, who was president of the United States? It was Barack Obama. That's when we first, I believe, in at least the last decade or so, started to get a sense that the haves and the have-nots are so far apart and that the average American is feeling the pinch and so frustrated that this economy, this system, capitalism, whatever you want to call it, as unfettered as it's become, no longer serves the average American well enough that there is discord. And nothing came of Occupy Wall Street. God bless them for trying, but the only ones who seemed to listen to the message were Bernie Sanders, AOC, the Progressive Caucus, and I think that you have a populist strain within the Republican Party as well. I think a lot of MAGA is Occupy Wall Street too. They too feel the pinch. They're completely deluded and misguided by lies, and they'll find this out. They FA'd, they will FO under President-elect Donald Trump here soon enough when the tariffs start rolling in and the tax cuts don't for them. I mean, there was a study that showed that nobody's getting a tax cut who earns less than, I think, $250,000. Okay, MAGA. Congratulations. You elected a tax increase. Anyway, Americans are drawn to strength, and Democrats need to start showing that strength by being tough verbally and in action when it comes to obstructing what is about to unroll when Donald Trump becomes president of the United States. Don't roll over and say, well, we got, the American people decide. No, the American people didn't decide this. Not even a majority of the American people.
Now, I don't blame the 2024 candidates. I thought they were wonderful and they gave me real hope for the future. Yeah. My blame lies with an old institution that seemingly refuses to accept the moment we're living in. Mm-hmm. We need a party that understands this is a completely different era filled with completely different problems that are only going to get worse. This keep calm and carry on thing is going to get us killed. We need a party with the balls to protect us and not the bank accounts of those they believe will protect them.
Right.
I say this with respect and admiration to many who have held Democratic leadership, but things have got to change. Mm-hmm. Enough with this red state, blue state stuff. Democrats need to be reaching out to every voter.
Yes.
This isn't about reinventing the wheel.
Yes. They
already have the policies that will allow them to do that, from paid family leaves to infrastructure to unions and manufacturing and affordable college. They are already the party advocating for freedom to love who you want to love and be who you want to be and get medical care you need without government interference. It's the Democrats who don't want your local school or hospital to close and don't want gunshot victims in either place. Democratic positions are popular, and we need to lean into them hard. When ideas are presented to people without party labels, people choose the Democratic policy positions 80+% of the time.
Yep.
These are winning platforms. So why aren't we winning? The incoming president plans to rule from the top down. So I think it is essential that Democrats rebuild from the ground up. What Donald Trump is planning ultimately won't work for 90% of the country. So we need to be ready to scoop up that abandoned majority as soon as the wool comes off their eyes. I am tired of being played by billionaires and the politicians and media empires they bought to make them even richer and more powerful. I am tired of being forced onto a team where only the captains get to win. Yep. Frankly, I'm tired of losing. These are dangerous times, but with courage, they can also be times of great opportunity. I encourage the Democratic Party to be brave in this moment, to put aside the way we've always done it for the way it should have always been done. Of the people, by the people, for the people. Because the people are the underdogs now, and they deserve leadership who will fight to protect them.
Again, that's Lee McGowan, a.k.a. Politics Girl. You see her, I believe, every once in a while on Newsnight with Abby Phillips on CNN. And, of course, she's huge on TikTok for as long as we still have TikTok. And now you're starting to see her do a little bit more, I guess, on Twitter X or Blue Sky. Is she on Blue Sky? I'll check. Anyway, back after this, more thoughts. The Ron Show on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn. All right, final few minutes of today's Ron Show. By the way, go ahead and put it on record somewhere. The Donald Trump presidency began yesterday, December 18th, 2024. That means he gets to own the stock market dive, as the Federal Reserve essentially said, here's your 0.25% rate cut. Do not expect any next year. And Wall Street reacted. Also, a looming government shutdown. You can expect stocks to react to that today as well, because Donald Trump has already started governing from Mar-a-Lago, telling those in Congress, don't pass that continuing resolution, not without a debt ceiling agreement, among other things, and other draconian cuts that they'd like to go ahead and take part in now. No, he wants to see the debt ceiling raised so that he can go ahead and do more corporate and high-dollar tax breaks once he gets into office. Can I just tell you, go ahead and write this down as well. I happen to think Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut, I think he wants to run for president. He is, I think, starting to show that he has the communication chops necessary. And maybe he should be DNC head. I don't know. Well, no, he's a senator. He's busy. But keep your eye on Chris Murphy, because I think Chris Murphy is starting to formulate the messaging machine, at least for himself. And we'll see what he does with his profile raising in the next few years. But Chris Murphy, he's one to watch. I say this because I want to share a tweet thread that he put out a couple of days ago, was it? Yeah, the 17th. That reads, it's happening right in front of our eyes. It's accelerated rapidly in the last 24 hours. Not sure why everyone doesn't see this. Can I take a minute to connect the dots on how Trump is putting into action a plan to cripple our democracy in a way we may never recover from? He, by the way, is sharing a tweet that came from the House Oversight Committee, where Representative Barry Loudermilk from right here in Georgia released a second interim report on the January 6th recommending criminal investigation into former Representative Liz Cheney. That's right, Liz Cheney should be criminally investigated based on the subcommittee's findings. From January 6th. Chris Murphy writes, he wasn't kidding when he said Democrats were the number one threat to America and needed to be dealt with by law enforcement and the military. He's speaking of Donald Trump. Today, the House Republicans' referral of Liz Cheney for criminal prosecution on made-up charges show you the plan. Chris Murphy continues, who will stand in the way of Cheney and others being put in jail? Not DOJ. Kash Patel was chosen to lead the FBI because he wants to prosecute Trump's opponents. Not the courts. Trump's pliant Department of Justice can handpick a jurisdiction with a MAGA judge. Not every Trump opponent will fold, but many will. If you have a family at home, are you really going to stand up to Trump if there's a chance you could end up in jail? History shows that selective prosecution of a regime's opponent has a broad, chilling effect, Chris Murphy writes. The second part of Trump's plan is to use the White House to destroy the free media. 2 days ago, he writes, today's lawsuit against the Des Moines Register, just because they released a poll showing a close race in Iowa, is stunning. And true, by the way. We shouldn't pretend this is normal. Already you see how the big media companies are giving in. ABC paid Trump $15 million even though his defamation suit had no merit. Jeff Bezos told the Post to not endorse against Trump. MSNBC is up for sale because Comcast doesn't want to get in trouble. Chris Murphy continues, sometimes Trump will win these suits because he controls the DOJ and some courts, but other times he doesn't care. After he lost one case against a journalist, he said, I did it to make his life miserable, which I'm happy about. He gladly admits it's about intimidation. This tweet thread continues. Trump has also said he will use the FEC and regulatory agencies, all of which will be run by his blind loyalists, to intimidate news organizations. Even if he uses this power rarely, media companies have already shown they are reluctant to put up a fight. Is there a chance this is all show and bluster? Chris Murphy asks. Maybe, but the developments of just the last few days, ABC's bogus settlement, the referral of Cheney for prosecution, Trump's suit against the Des Moines Register, all point to this being very, very real. Chris Murphy yesterday on Deadline White House on MSNBC.
So I think it's really important to explain to people the why, right? Why is Donald Trump engaged in this relentless campaign to try to silence journalists, media companies, and his political opposition? It's because he's trying to steal from you. He and his friends are in charge of government because they want to rig the rules in order to make them even richer. The billionaires that are in charge of this cabinet want to be multi-billionaires. Donald Trump will never be satiated. He wants to steal from ordinary Americans in order to make him and his Mar-a-Lago friends even richer. Yep. And the reason that he wants to silence his critics and silence the media is that he doesn't want anybody to notice the kleptocracy that he is building. Unless you tell that story, right, how does it impact you, right? Because, I mean, does the average citizen really care about whether ABC News settles a lawsuit or not? No, but they do care if the result of that is that their Social Security gets cut in half so that Elon Musk and Peter Thiel can get another massive tax cut. That matters to people. That story is the one that we have to get out there.
And to add to Senator Murphy's point, this isn't just a Trump thing. This is a Georgia Republican thing. Back to the school voucher situation, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution cites. For example, the 4,500 students at all 6 schools in Middle Georgia's Baldwin County, rural Baldwin County, the 4,500 students in that county could be eligible for student vouchers because one school, Oak Hill Middle School, was rated as low performing. The median income in Baldwin County for a family is about $74,684, which means that a lot of families might qualify for those school vouchers. The problem is the schools in Baldwin County that are private schools where those vouchers might go offer tuition numbers that are higher than $6,500, meaning those families are still going to be out of pocket a minimum of at least $1,500 from what I can tell. John Millage Academy's information is available. EBLA High School Academy is not. So if those families can't use that money, those vouchers, in any way, shape, form, or fashion, they just won't sign up for it. And it'll continue to roll down until a family who is willing to accept it does accept it. That would be the family that's already sending their child to John Millage Academy or EBLA school in Baldwin County. So again, this is just money from the taxpayer to those who don't need it to continue to have the lifestyle that they covet, that also the rest of us might covet as well, but have no use for because we can't afford it. Going back to the Georgia Recorder's columnist Jay Bookman, his article on the school voucher program, the last line, remember this, rural communities in particular, Baldwin County, Georgia, are wary of proposals that would drain resources from their public schools. And if Democrats are looking for a way to restore common ground with those voters, the fight against vouchers offers a great opportunity to do so. This is why I say when Stacey Abrams runs for governor, she's got to go to Baldwin County, Georgia, and maybe sometimes leave Fulton, DeKalb, Gwinnett, Augusta, Richmond, Macon, Bibb, Columbus, Muskogee. It's why I vocally cringed when I saw that the Kamala Harris-Tim Walz South Georgia bus tour was essentially Savannah, Georgia, which is not all of South Georgia. There are counties like Appling, Bleckley, Candler, Dodge, Emmanuel, Evans, Jeff Davis, Johnson, Lawrence, Montgomery, Tatnall, Telford, Toombs, Truland, Wayne, Wheeler, and Wilcox counties as well. Got to go there, Blue Team. It's going to do it for today's Ron Show. Back tomorrow, 9 to 10 a.m., 5 to 6 p.m. on America One Radio, 11 to midnight, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. Have a great day.